Chapter 21. Flight from Kantom. Fourth dark day of Cantle, 819. 26 days until Sown. Eosia tells me in a hushed voice, Caradoc wants me to get you away from Canton Lijunscuros as quickly as possible. The crow is undoubtedly Caradoc, but his meaning is unclear. It probably means they are summoning me. You think so? I show him my infected arms again. Right, we're leaving. Where to? Caradoc didn't specify that. I assumed you had a location in mind. Simbel charged Ysela and Arthmael to stick with me and deliver me to the council when they request my presence. All the more reason to leave. What of Ysela and Arthmael? Leave them to me. We collect Arthmael, and Eosia waves the others to follow us as we trudge toward the tree-covered southern hills. So, who here can find a beehive in these woods? Eosia asks. I can, I reply. Nonsense. You're the patient. Can anyone else remember their basic woodcraft? Sifra and I are out, Catel says. I spend my time underground, and Sifra is involved in much more important tasks. I guess that leaves you two, Eosia says to Ysela and Arthmael. And what about you? Ysela asks. I am a journeyman druid. I never have to prove my worth to anyone ever again. Ysela looks suspiciously at me. Lord Simbel charged us to stay close to Grame. I will take care of him, though he seems stout enough to my eye. Eosia twirls his staff. I could tell them where the obvious spots are, I offer. Ysela scowls at me. Find the cat's eye flowers. They're the only plants still in bloom. You can follow the bees back to their hive, I say anyway. They can take my advice, or they can flounder. Ysela grabs Arthmael's elbow and drags him into the thickest part of the woods. It appears they've chosen to flounder. Good luck trying to stumble upon a beehive that way. Catel and Sifra move off in the opposite direction to have their own private conversation. Have you managed to get the ghost orchid? Eosia asks. Startled, I grab my pack. Yes. I eye him cautiously. Then why aren't you back at Dartmoor? He asks, bewildered. I discovered that the Black Lord's men had taken the hill fort at Sarum. I fled north to stay out of his reach and warn Simbel. The Plains Druids found me and have kept asking me questions that I can't answer. So I ended up in Irons and was brought here. Let's change into Merlins and leave here. I hold out my arm, still shaky. I can't, or at least I shouldn't. I fought the Obsidian Mage and his men at the Giant's Choir. His eyes go wide. By yourself? That's why I'm drained. I'm not to use any magic for a month. Then why did they slap irons on you? I think Simbel was hoping I'd give in and tell him the details of my quest. Why didn't you? I was sworn by one of the 9 not to share details of my quest with anyone unless they are already familiar. That's asinine. I'm afraid to ask, but was it your mentor or mine who told you that? I cannot say. He waits for me to say more. Finally, he shrugs. Well, if we can't take off without them, then we're stuck walking the whole way. So, I guess we're going to have to convince them to come with us. I smile at his naivety. How can we do that? Leave it to me. I wish I had his confidence. He inspects my arms once more before shaking his head. Fighting the best staff men of the Druids was so much easier than your quest. He looks around to see if we are being watched. Catel and Sifra are deep in their own conversation. Ysela and Arthmael are out of sight. No doubt if Loris finds out you have the flower, he'll take it for himself. What does he want with it? If he can turn it to stone, the flower will release an elven tear. We think he means to use it for some sort of magical rite, but he keeps his counsel to himself. So that's why the orchids are called elven tears. Sifra and Catel furtively glance over at us. We end up staring at them until they release our gaze and resume their own heated talks. What would a fight between these two fragile druids look like? Whatever they were discussing, Siofra must have capitulated. Catel gestures with her head, and Siofra sullenly marches over to us. He keeps his head facing the ground. Catel hits him on the back of his shoulder, and he nearly topples over. "Ask them," she demands. We... He checks Catel, but her face is hard as stone. He swallows and continues, "We heard you mention elven tears. Do you have any on your person?" His voice trembles like a scolded child. I want to laugh at the situation, but I'm afraid that might make him cry. "No, why'd you ask?" He flashes an "I told you so" look at Catel. "We've gone this far, and they do mentor under Boswin and Caradoc," Catel says, "but no amount of cajoling will force Siofra to speak further." Catel sighs. "What did you make of the ceremony this morning?" "It was a powerful moment to hear the speech of the gods, even if I couldn't understand the message." "The Earth Mother speaks in a language all her own. One does not translate her speech. You need to let it flow through you and feel the message she is sending." I felt an impossible power enveloping me, but that's all. "If you are not accustomed to these meetings, it is hard to discern the message," Catel says dismissively. "What did you hear from the Earth Mother?" I ask. "That is what we are trying to determine." "Oh, thank the gods that Ysella is nothing like her sister." "You probably only know her manifestations as the three sister goddesses. We cave druids are closer to her than any other, so we know her true being. Siofra and Lord Egan are protectors of the Gwanwyns of Sulis, so they know her manifestations very well." "Thank you for enlightening us," Eosia says tonelessly. "That's not all. We are also working on deciphering the writings of the elder races," Catel says. Siofra is wringing his hands and avoiding eye contact. He shifts his weight from foot to foot. It's only after he realizes that we are all staring at him that he stops. "Tell them," Catel says. "What if we're found out?" he asks. "Tell them or I will. You are the expert, so they should hear it from you." They lock eyes briefly before Siofra submits. "What I'm about to tell you could get us all ostracized from the Druids, or worse." If he was trying to dissuade me, he couldn't have been any less successful. "Go ahead." "Loris has been kind of a disaster for us since he ascended to the head druid position last year. Lords Egan and Hedrid had hoped that his experience from living on the continent would help push the stodgier of the Nine into expanding our knowledge." "How has he been a disaster? Boswin tells me nothing." "In the east," Catel says, "the Wigister have built temples of wood and stone, and they worship our gods in these buildings." "That's ridiculous. You can't hope to contain a god in a building, no matter what the walls are made of," Eosia says. "There was a temple at Solent City and at Sarum," I say, "and neither of those cities are controlled by the Wigister." Catel and Siofra exchange a wordless glance. "The Wigister started years ago to undercut us as intercessors to the gods," Siofra says. "Why doesn't every druid know this?" Eosia asks in outrage. "It is Lord Egan who tracks them, but Caradoc should be aware as well. They had hoped that Loris could persuade the council to unearth elven and giant burials so that we could learn of their rune magic." "By looting the graves of the elder races?" I don't even try to hide my disgust. "The druids of the mainland use the magic of the giants' runes already. By learning the runes and the elven script, we would be in a better position to defend Brittany," Siofra says. "The ceremony today was to honor the Earth Mother," Catel says, "but we also asked her to aid us in understanding the runes. Lord Hedrid beseeched her to give us the name of the ice rune. In the last chamber where we druidesses were, the light shone upon Is. So now we must test this to confirm that this is the name of the ice-making rune." "Why would we need that?" Eosia asks. "It is the scholars like Siofra and Lord Egan whose duty is to expand this knowledge," Catel says. But Sinbel, Braden, Drustan, and Merod believe this knowledge is forbidden. Loris was supposed to convince them to allow it, but he focuses only on glorifying himself. That's why we can't speak in front of Ysela or Arthmael. They answer to Sinbel, Sifra adds. The elven tears, if you were to get one, could be used to commune with the gods more readily. Without it, we must wait for beneficial alignments, like this morning, to speak with them. Thank you, I say. At last I understand why the stupid flower is so important to so many people. A bear bursts out of the undergrowth, loping right for us. Sifra lets out a yelp before freezing in place. Catel screams and runs the opposite direction. I roll my eyes. Together, they have demonstrated everything you shouldn't do when you encounter a bear. And they are druids? Relax, I call out. Can't you tell that it's Arthmael in bear form? The bear slows his stride and trudges toward us, grunting as he approaches. Sifra has fallen into a fetal position. I walk forward to greet Arthmael. He rears up and growls at me. It's no use, Arthmael. I know it's you. Arthmael ponderously anamorphs back into his human form. How did you know? Yeah, how can you tell it's a druid when they're in animal form? Eosia asks. He twirls the staff absent-mindedly as he approaches. When Arthmael walks, he dips his left shoulder. The bear did also. No bear would live long with that clumsy of a gait. It could only be successful hunting deaf prey. Really? Can you pick out Ysela in animal form? Eosia? Arthmael challenges. It depends. If one of you is in bird form, then I couldn't tell by your distinctive walk. But I could probably guess. Flamboyant people tend to be flamboyant birds, just like I know without a doubt that the crow we saw before was Caradoc. Catel, Eosia shouts. It's safe to return. The leaves rustle as Sifra picks himself up off the ground. I'll get her. Arthmael gives me a questioning glance, but I can't explain why Sifra or Catel do what they do. Did you find a hive? I did. Follow me. Arthmael turns and dips his left shoulder as he shows us the way. Eosia smiles. He saw the telltale move. We go slowly, so that Sifra and Catel can find us. Can we find a path without so many leaves? Catel asks for the 13th time. It's autumn, I say. What is the problem with the leaves? Eosia asks. Down below, when you hear the ground beneath you crackle, it means the stone beneath your feet isn't stable. You move quickly or you fall to your death. These cursed leaves sound just like it. But you can see they're only leaves, I say. We learn to use all of our senses down below. Sight is in many ways the most useless of them all, so I don't trust my eyes. Hence, a path that doesn't promise me death at every step would be easier on my nerves. Try keeping your feet skimming over the top of the ground and kick the leaves out of your way, Sifra suggests. She takes his advice for the rest of the hike. We are the noisiest group of druids to ever walk upon Prytani. 2 jackdaws go streaking through the treetops to our right, calling out an alarm. What is it? Sifra asks nervously. Quiet, I say. Everyone, Eosia says in a low voice. Let's move into that copse of trees. We have much to discuss. Ysela looks at me, but I shrug. I don't have any answers. Well, nothing that I want to volunteer, at least. Catel and Sifra gladly enter into the darkest shadows. Holding his finger to his mouth, Eosia asks for silence, while we all scan the sky. The eerie silence builds as we wait in vain. Finally, Eosia speaks up. We have much to discuss and not much time to do it. He turns to face Ysela and Arthmael. Grami may not be at liberty to say, but I am under no such restrictions. Grami possesses a ghost orchid. You mean the flower in his pack? Arthmael asks. Yes. I knew it, Sifra shouts. Eosia stares him down. Sorry, Sifra says. Why does anyone care about that little flower? Gisela asks. The ghost orchid is a rare flower that is said to form only when an elf's tear hits the ground. Once sprouted, it will come back only under perfect conditions. As you may imagine, they are few these days. I've never heard of them. They possess an innate magic that is best left undisturbed. Grami's quest was to bring one of these flowers back to Boswin. Why didn't you tell us that? Gisela demands. I was commanded to remain silent. Gisela shakes her head in disgust. You are as bad as your mentor. If I may, Eosia says, Loris is aware of the magic within these flowers, and if he were to find out Grami has one, he would demand it be turned over to him. What that fat fool would do with it is anyone's guess. He's the head druid, Gisela scolds. My mentor and I hold him in low regard, I'm afraid. There are those among the druids who would like to study the flower and harness its magic for good. It is for this reason that we can't let Grami be found and presented to the Council of Nine. That's what we were charged to do, Arthmael says. No, I say. You were to make sure I show up when and if I receive a summons. No one has summoned me yet. Nice try. But I don't shirk the duties given to me by a member of the Nine either, Gisela says. Then your choices are, Eosia says. You can fight Grami and me, and if you subdue us both, you can present him to the Nine. Or you can travel with us, and if we should be discovered, then you are free to do your duty. I promise not to interfere. Eosia spins his staff idly. Gisela sizes Eosia up before turning to Arthmael, but it's clear that he wants no part in making a decision. Catel, you and Sifra have been quiet. Where do you stand? I won't fight, Sifra blurts. I love you, sister, but we are with Eosia. Gisela stares open-mouthed, unable to express her disbelief. It turns out our lords are working with Caradoc and Boswin, Catel adds. Gisela turns to me, but I'm as surprised as she is. How is it that everyone knows as much or more than I do? Then the jackdaws? Gisela asks. They answer to Caradoc. It is a signal to us and a way to flush all the birds to flight, covering our exit. Gisela looks expectantly at Arthmael. My head is still ringing, he says. I don't want to face Eosia. Gisela glares at her sister, but Catel is busy humming to herself. Sifra is staring at the ground. It seems I'm outnumbered, Gisela starts. You give your word that when they find us, and we're commanded to bring Grami to see the council, you will not interfere? I do, Eosia says. Exasperated, Gisela throws up her arms. Then I guess I have no choice but to agree. Thank you. I did not wish to fight either of you, Eosia says. I suggest we all turn into jackdaws and scout for Grami. I can't anamorph, Sifra says. And I can only change into a bat or an otter, Catel adds. With exaggerated patience, Eosia says, That's all right. You don't have to come with us. Oh, no. Grami has an elven tear. We're coming with you, Catel says. Then the three of us will scout, Eosia says, and you two can walk with Grami. I think actively trying to avoid our lord would go against our orders, Gisela says. So Arthmael and I won't be your scouts. Then we walk all the way to Land's End together, Eosia says, defeated. We can't chance the Londingham road to Lord Egan's camp. They're sure to check his camp first. We should cross south of the road and then head southwest. We should hit the Druid Ditch Road somewhere near the Tor of Innis Witrin. Because no one will think to check the only major road that heads into the Land's End Peninsula, Gisela says sarcastically. Hopefully by then I can change into a bird and fly the rest of the way home, I say. Fine, lead the way. We will be crossing the plains without seeing a tree or any other means of cover for a couple of days, Ysella says. You and Arthmael know the way better than anyone else. Again, I'm not going to actively shirk my orders. I shrug. How many druids would expect us to be doing that? Eosia extends his hand, inviting me to lead the way. I don't blame him. I don't really want to lead the group on a fruitless mission either, but I can't really refuse.